Make no mistakes, people, the US is heading for a recession. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, we're standing on the edge of an economic collapse. The evidence is all around us, and if you're going to have any hope of surviving when our economy starts tumbling down, then you need to be on the lookout for these signs. From our rising national debt to inflation, there are 10 distinct signs that the US economy is about to collapse, and we'll be breaking each of them down in this video, as well as the best ways to safeguard yourself when the worst ultimately happens. Pay close attention. Number 1. The national debt. The first sign of the collapse of the economy is the spike in our national debt. At $35 trillion and counting, our national debt is the highest it has ever been and is a big threat to the future of our economy. To understand just how big of a deal this is, imagine if you and every American were in debt for over $100,000. That is the current state of our country's debt. The size of our national debt has seen noticeable increases in recent years. Our national debt has more than doubled in the past decade alone. Experts and analysts forecast that by 2034, our debt could have risen by as much as another $10 trillion. Our national debt crisis has put all Americans on a sinking economic ship. The government's tax revenue is unable to keep up with its spending, constantly putting us in a deficit and forcing the country to increase its debt. At least $1 trillion will be spent on the annual interest payment for our debt this year, and this number will only increase in the next few years as our debt continues to climb. The state of our national debt will hinder public investment, stagnate the growth of our economy, destroy international confidence in the US dollar, and increase our risk of a fiscal crisis. It could even lead to much higher tax rates in the near future. Number 2. Inflation and rising costs in America. The rising costs of goods and services in the country have been a considerable burden on the shoulders of Americans. Consumers' purchasing power is at a low point, and Americans are struggling to afford even the most basic and essential supplies and utilities. Prices of goods have surged by over 21% since 2020. As our wages struggle to keep up with rising inflation, Americans are being forced into tight corners. Grocery prices in particular have seen a significant increase in price in recent months. We might be getting to the point where we're going to have to hunt and grow our own food just to put food on our tables and feed our families. Number 3. The American housing crisis. The third sign of the downfall of the American economy is the current housing crisis. Analysis shows that the average price of rent and housing has increased by at least 8 times. On the other hand, the median household income has only increased by 3 times. Owning a house in America is harder than ever, and things are only going to get worse as experts speculate even more hikes in the price of housing next year. Mortgage prices have gone up by 40% since 2021, and studies show that tens of millions of Americans spend more than half of their household income on housing. And things are only going to get worse because of inflation, high interest rates, and a higher demand for housing than supply. Studies show that the US is between 2.3 million and 6.5 million units short of a healthy housing supply, adding more fuel to the fires of a crumbling economy. Number 4. Unemployment and weak job reports. Yet another sign of the impending collapse of our economy is the worrying state of our labor market. Job growth in the past months has gone way below recommended levels. The job market is running at a much slower pace than in recent years, and the hiring rate is the lowest it's been in a long time. August statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed that non-farm employment in the country rose by a mere 114,000 in July, marking the lowest increase since 2020. The cracks in the labor market are forming, and as data from the SARM Rule Recession Indicator suggests, the average unemployment rate over the past few months could be an indicator of an imminent recession. Number 5. The decline in consumer spending. As the prices for everyday goods and services keep rising with no end in sight and stagnant wages, people have less money to spend. Now, you might be wondering how people spending less money could be bad for the whole economy. But what if I told you that a decline in consumer spending was one of the precedents of the Great Depression? A decline like this, brought about as a result of inflation, could be the final straw for America's economy. Consumer spending is vital to the economy. In 2024 alone, personal consumption expenditures represent nearly 68% of the nation's GDP. Many companies are feeling the effect of the decline in spending as corporations report a noticeable decrease in profits. Some stores have been forced to close down and thousands of jobs have been lost, with many more at risk. Unfortunately, it will only get worse as disposable income continues to fall and prices rise. And experts say that with the restart of student loan payments, the decline will continue. As consumer spending takes a turn, companies affected could cut back on production, and the economy may start to experience a slowdown or recession. Number 6. Bank failures and financial instability. The collapse of banks across the nation could be leading to a banking crisis that will shake the economy. Since 2017, at least 15 banks have failed, and many more are showing signs of instability. In 2023 alone, 5 banks were forced to close, including Silicon Valley Bank, one of the top 20 largest banks in America, and the bank closure trend has continued into this year. The same factors that led to the collapse of Silicon Valley, factors such as unrealized losses on investment securities and heavy reliance on uninsured deposits, were also responsible for the collapse of Republic First Bank in 2024. Other banks in the country are at risk of failure as well. Unrealized security losses have reached $478 billion. 40 banks with more than $1 billion in assets have reported unrealized security losses greater than 50% of their equity capital, and more than 200 smaller banks are in the same position. Number 7. The corporate debt crisis. Unsustainable levels of corporate debt in America is an emerging problem that has many economists worried. Analysis shows that corporate debt accounted for 2/3 of credit growth during the 3 years preceding financial busts, downturns, and crises from 1940 to 2014. Many analysts believe that corporate debt expansions are an important indicator of an imminent economic crash. Corporate debt defaults soared in 2023, and most analysts believe the trend is likely to continue into 2024. The number of companies that failed to make required payments on their debt totaled 153 in 2023, up from 85 in 2022 and an increase of 80%. According to S&P, hard times are ahead for corporate America, which according to the Federal Reserve is carrying a $13.7 trillion debt. Company debt has jumped 18.3% since the pandemic in 2020. Number 8. The retirement crisis. We are facing a retirement crisis. Many Americans are struggling to save for retirement, and about half of working households will not be able to maintain their standard of living. You know, an economy is in crisis when a good number of men and women who've worked their whole lives are unable to save enough money to live comfortably after retirement. The retirement crisis may be the one thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on. A survey by BlackRock showed that 3 out of 4 Republicans are concerned about not being able to maintain a good standard of living in retirement, and 3 out of 4 Democrats had similar concerns. Many Americans are unable to save for retirement. The vast majority of retirement savings come through a plan provided by an employer, but an estimated 56 million private sector workers don't have a plan at work. Even those with retirement savings and a 401k are worried that economic factors like inflation will reduce the value and purchasing power of what little they have in savings. Insufficient retirement savings are also a burden on taxpayers. The Pew study found that inadequate retirement savings will significantly affect every state and the federal government over the next 20 years, resulting in a combined $1.3 trillion increase in public assistance costs. Number 9. The credit card debt crisis. As Americans struggle to keep up with the rising cost of living, the credit card crisis is a burden on the economy. Our total credit card debt is the highest it has ever been, racking up to $1.14 trillion in the second quarter of the year. It marks the 8th time in the past 9 quarters when credit card debt increased. And thanks to record interest rates, inflation, and other economic factors, credit card balances are likely only going to climb higher. The average credit card debt in the US is $8,674, the highest amount since 2003. As credit card rates go up and credit card companies make record profits off everyday Americans, the strain on the economy is only getting worse. Profiteering by credit card companies cost people an extra $25 billion last year, and is yet another example of corporations using inflation as a cover to rip people off. Number 10. The student loan debt crisis. With over 43 million people in debt, totaling over $1.7 trillion, student loan debt has far-reaching effects on the economy and could lead to an economic crisis. Student loan balances can have a significant impact on the economy because they prevent borrowers from moving forward with other financial plans like buying a home or a car. Student loan debt also hinders spending by limiting the amount of free cash in consumers' pockets. Student debt is at an all-time high, affecting the economy in a number of ways. It correlates to fewer new businesses and lower rates of home ownership, with estimates indicating that every $1,000 in student loan debt reduces the home ownership rate by about 1.8% for those who attended public four-year institutions. It also reduces consumer spending and impacts retirement savings. A 2019 study found that 84% of people with student loans said their debt limits their ability to save for retirement. The high level of student debt is one of the holes in our sinking ship economy. And there we have it, folks, 10 signs you need to be on the lookout for. The US economy is on the verge of collapse. Things are bad and they won't be getting better anytime soon. Our only hope as a country is to make some tough decisions and implement effective policies. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can stay up to date with the state of the economy.